My name is Rosalind K. Renfro Deaton. The first time I came to Greene County was July of 1956 when Carl came for an interview. It was about the hottest time I've seen. We came down from Cincinnati for his interview. Miss Guthrie gave me a job at that time also, teaching elementary PE. And we moved here in September of 1957 and have been here ever since. At that time, when I started, I only did health and PE or English. I did not coach until about 1965, 64 or 5. And then it was girls track. I retired after 34 years in 1991.
My name is Carl Deaton, and I came to Greene County, followed my wife in 1957. And I came because they had a track opening, and my college career was in sports, was in track and field. I came here to start the program as a full-time sport. They had had some individual participation, but as far as having a full team, they had not had that. So my responsibility, I thought, was just to start the program and get it going. But when I got here, I was informed by the principal that I would be the first assistant basketball coach, because at the same time I came, the head basketball came, and his name was Dick Shrewsbury, and he was a great guy. I thought a lot of him. He helped me out a whole lot with the early days. Spent 36 years in the Greene County system and retired out in '93.
My name is Larry Gum, and I've lived in Greene County 82 years. I was born here, and I went to the school system, went to all classes here, and played the sports that they had, which they only had 2 sports, which was basketball and a little baseball. And in basketball, I played pretty good. I had a lot of good games. Baseball, I was so-so, but I did get a scholarship for Campbellsville Junior College, and I played basketball up there and had a pretty good career there. And then I came back, and I couldn't go anywhere, but I lived in Greene County, and Miss Guthrie called me and said, "Larry, would you go out to Brush Creek and teach a one-room school?" I said, She said, "Well, now they ran off the teacher, and you'll have to be able to handle those people." I went out there, and I had a wonderful experience teaching a one-room school. I had about 12 students, and it really was some fun. And I went back to Western, went down and got my degree in 2 years, and played baseball for Western. Had a pretty decent career there. Came back home, and I thought I was going to be able to get to the high school, but I couldn't. So she put me in another one-room school, and I've worked through that. But then I went back to Western in '59 and got my master's. Came back, and guess what? In '60 and '61, I got to be the baseball coach, and I was Carl Deaton's assistant coach, which lasts for 27 years. And I just assisted. But in those days, we had advantage because all the good athletes could play every sport. In other words, now you can't do that. Very few of them, if they're good football players, they'll probably stay in football because you can't practice year-round. They got new rules on it. But anyway, I thought it was a good deal, and we stayed here and had a good time. And even then, I coached 44 years, and I taught 51 years, and it was a really good experience for me.
My name is Jerry Coward. I'm a Greensburg native, Greene County native. I went to school here, 1961 through 1966, 65. At the high school, I played baseball for 4 years for Coach Gunn,
That's right.
his first team. I tried to play basketball for Coach Deaton. I played football for 2 years, and also I was a manager for 1 year as the first year in '62. Teacher here, I was hired in 1969-70, and I taught PE for the first couple of years. Then I came to the high school in the social studies department, and I was hired. I was in Houston, Texas. My parents were down there, and I got a call from Professor Tate. I want to know if I was interested in the job. I came back and came as an 8th grade coach, started 8th grade football team. And from there I moved up from 8th grade to freshman, JV, and then to the varsity. And after a number of years, I was hired as a head coach in 1980. And I have 15 years as a head coach, and I total 27 years of coaching football, and 10 years coaching baseball with Coach Gum. I retired in 2001 after 31 years of teaching at Greene County here.
When we moved to Greene County, we didn't know a person in Greensburg except from the time we had with our interview with Mr. Tate and Ms. Guthrie. So Ms. Guthrie looked out for us there as far as getting a place to live, and we lived in a apartment up over top of Chester's, which was a restaurant there on Main Street back in those days. And a pretty good deal there, just starting out. The coaching pay and the teaching pay wasn't that much, but we had a deal that we thought was pretty good. We would get 2 meals at the restaurant, and a babysitter for Mike, who was just 3 or 4 months old at the time, and $175 a month. So that was a real deal for most people, and we appreciated that. But then it got a little later. It got a little bit. We wanted to get out to where we have a yard and whatever, and we decided to rent a house. So we moved over on Hodges Street in Greensburg and stayed there for probably a couple of years, I guess, a year and a half. You might expound on that a little.
When we came, we had to borrow a car to get here from Carl's brother. We had enough things that we could, or didn't have enough things that we needed anything larger than a car, because we only had like 2 suitcases and 2 or 3 boxes and baby stuff. So we stayed at Chester's for a while, and his helper Mag took care of Mike during the day. And we could walk to school because we could go across the footbridge and up the street to the high school. Then we rented that little house out by E.J. Milby's, and we stayed out there about a year, and then this house came available on Hodges, and we did move over there for a while. And had some good neighbors over there, and Mike had people to play with, and we were pretty happy. But then Carl decided he might like a larger place. So one day he goes out and buys a house down at Hillview Acres, and we lived there for several years. But went to church at Greensburg Baptist Church, and they were all very accepting. But the thing about Greene County, they always say, well, they're really nice, but they're not from here. So I guess Jerry and Larry were really lucky in that they were from here.
That's true.
But everybody's been really good to us through the years. Got a lot of friends.
As far as track facilities, we had none. Mr. Tate and Mr. John Moore, who was an industrial arts teacher. I had been familiar with not having stuff at Morehead State, where I went to school. Our maintenance department built everything. We built hurdles, we built jumping boxes for the pole vault, straw pile around a pile of sawdust for a high jump and pole vault. And we ran our first track meet over where the tennis court used to be, and a 220-yard, which was all the distance we could get on that little field. So it was 8 laps to the mile, and we ran our first track meet there. But Miss Guthrie and Mr. Tate had promised me that they would build us a facility as if track caught on as we went along. So in the meantime, after a few years here, Dick Shrewsbury, who was the head basketball coach and baseball coach, he and his wife decided to go to LaGrange, Georgia. They had a bigger school and a better opportunity and much better pay. So they called me after he left and wanted to know if I would be interested in the head job, which I first said, no, I've got too much to do here trying to get this track program going. And I said, let me think about it overnight. And we talked about it and thought about, the opportunities might be pretty good. I'd been a basketball player in high school. And the reason I was at Morehead, because they offered me an opportunity to walk on there in basketball, but it didn't work out for me. And I turned to track. So next day I called Miss Guthrie and told her, yeah, I would be interested in taking the job. And I said, now I have to have an assistant coach, because I've got these three sports. I was going to start cross country, which I did that the second year. We just did the track the first year, and then we started up a cross country team the second year, and she said she had the perfect person for me to be my assistant coach, and she called in the guy that I've always got along great with, and I don't think we've ever had a falling out or any kind of deal, which is hard when you're competitive like both of us were and involved in sports. So we spent a long time together, and our kids played ball for us, both of them. Larry's kids were more baseball oriented on account of his background, but one of his sons was a tremendous runner, had the speed, and had what we needed on a relay, and he's spent a year with us on the relay team. And from there, we just, I don't know, in 62, I think it was, when we decided, our school board and the principal and whatever, they wanted to start football. So that gave me the opportunity to present my side of the deal, because they were going to have to build a football field. And that's when they bought the Penick Addition up here property and started moving dirt. And I laid out the track, because I had a great college coach who taught a track class on how to build your own track and build your own equipment if you didn't have the money, which not many people had money. There was only one track in this area down here, Western Kentucky University, and we held our conference track meets the first year or two down there. But anyway, when they started this football and got it going, they enlarged the area they were dozing off and filling to make a 6-lane track, which I've always regretted that we didn't build an 8-lane, but we were so pleased to have a facility that was a quarter-mile layout that we could not fuss about getting 2 more lanes at that time. And also at that same time, of course, Larry didn't have a baseball field. He was using the field out at Legion Park. And the first year of football, they played football out at Legion Park on a 80-yard field, I believe it was, Jerry. Is that about right?
That's correct.
Well, and after that, then they hired a coach, and I hope I'm not stealing your thunder here.
That's good.
But anyway, I knew Ivan because he was coaching football at Henderson County, and he was also coaching track. So Western always had a big invitational high school track meet. So we were there, and he was there, and we got together when he was looking to get a head job. I think he was assistant at that time, and I told him about Mr. Tate might have already called him because he knew him also. But anyway, Ivan accepted the coaching job here, and that's how we all got together as a group here.
I'm speaking on behalf of Coach Canute. I spoke with him on Tuesday. Football started in 1962 here, and it was 35 players. And Coach spoke very fondly of the people he had, talented, they had size, speed, and the biggest thing he said had big hearts and desire. At the time, I was a manager because I was 112 pounds, probably dripping wet, but I was a manager on the team, and we played the first football game out at the park on an 80-yard field, and it took us all day putting lime on the line there out of a cup. I learned football from the inside out, I guess you might say. But it was a lot of training. There was only one player who had experience playing football, and that was Charlie Calhoun. He'd come from Alabama. He had some quarterbacking experience, but everybody else, even the coaches, Coach Gum was helping with the first team when he helped, and Jim Evans, and I was also assistant coach because I helped Jim Evans with the plays. I learned all the plays from watching those guys, but it was kind of like building a plane as you were flying it. But football was, Coach Canute said that the community was involved, and TGT was very instrumental in helping and getting it off the ground. And he said if those guys could have 2 or 3 years of experience, he was sure that they would have been one of the best teams in the state because had desire, size, speed, and everything it would take to get it done. And it was a community effort. Everybody got in and helped out, coaches, and everybody they had their own part in football. From there, and Coach had mentioned track, I ran track in the wintertime. You got to say wintertime track because I played baseball, but we ran the Mason-Dixon game. Remember the short relay?
Right.
We had the record for a little while. We saw Ralph Boston and Willie White and all those guys at the Mason-Dixon game. But also I trained with Johnny Horton. Johnny Horton's legs are just about as tall as I am, and I was trying to run sprints with him. We up on the tennis court. We used to starting blocks there. That was interesting. When you built the track, put cinders on there. You remember the cinders on the track there? And they brought it in big dump truck loads of cinders and spreading those things out. And I tell you what, you fell down the nose, you had something to remember, arms and knees and everything else. But the football field, building the football field, 1963, I believe, was a dust bowl. Dust about that deep on it before you got grass and everything like that. And that was an interesting thing. And we had to practice there on the field because we didn't have any other place to practice. The first football team in '62 practiced behind a green jersey because Jim Evans owned a green jersey and practiced behind that field. Sam Moore had that field back there among the cow piles and everything else back there. He had to move those out of the way. But it was very interesting because the players didn't know what the equipment was for and various things. And there was a few jokes played on a few guys as what went where in the football gear. And we still laugh about that from time to time. And Coach Canute told me one guy that he heard that would make a good football player. His name was Donald O. Marianne Evans told Coach about him. They went out in the tobacco patch and got him, brought him in and suited him up. And he was a gentle giant. I mean, he was huge, fast, had all kind of talent. And it's been wonderful to have seen him play 3 or 4 years I'm sure he would have gotten a college scholarship somewhere. But that was the beginning of football here in 1962. And Coach Canute, again, appreciated the effort for everybody to help him out. And he's in Tucson, Arizona right now. He'll be here in the fall later on.
The people that helped me the most in my track project, and he was there about every day, was Mr. John Ewan. We walked off the dimensions basically, and then when we decided where we were going to start building the track, and of course it was going to be around the football, we had to wait till they laid out the football, and then I had the book on the track already, had a class laying them out and the distances, and there's a lot of technology that goes into that most people don't understand. We decided to put a curb around our track because we were going to, like Jerry said, use cinders, and that's what most tracks were back then. Nobody had tried, to my knowledge, of just running on plain blacktop like eventually we did. But we put a curb around that track. Well, a 440-yard track is actually a little bit farther because you have to, if you don't move that curb in, if you put it at 440 yards, you can't run on the curb because you're disqualified. Or if you just put a line down, if you run on that line more than 3 steps, it's disqualification. So you had to allow for that extra distance, and you were allotted 1 foot. You'd be running 1 foot from the curb. So you had to figure that to have exact measurements. And man, our coach there at Moorhead, he wanted it exact. And we had a class of about 25 people, I guess, and I'm not pushing myself, but I think I'm the only one that laid that track out the way it's supposed to be as far as the exact distance on that inside lane. And cinders, if we're talking about getting the cinders, I got permission to go to L&N in Louisville because I had been told that they had stacks of cinders up there that you might can get them for a real cheap price. So I go up and talk to the head man up there at L&N and explained our building project and told him what we needed. And he said, I'll give you all the cinders you want if you'll just pay the shipping bill, and we'll send the boxcars. At that time, the railroad unloaded sand and whatever over here by the Double Cola plant. And so he did. He started shipping, and all I had to do was call and tell him we need 1 more, 2 more, or whatever. And we, Mr. Moore, John Moore, had gone to purchase used Army equipment, and it just so happened they had a big dump truck up there, and he got it for nickel on the dollar, I guess, and I used that dump truck. I hauled every load of those cinders and dumped them around that track, and we had to add something to bond it together, so we had to put clay in there to make the surface hard when you drug it down. And then talking about liming, just think about liming 6 lanes, a quarter mile each lane, by hand, walking backward, spreading lime like that. Our team got a real workout the day before a track meet, and we were all anxious to have a home track meet because we'd been going to Western, and well, Glasgow had, in the meantime, had gotten a track and somewhere else. So they would jump in there and we'd get that thing limed off, and then if you had another one, you had to come back and redo it. Of course, it's a little easier the second time because you kept the imprint there pretty much. And that's how we got our track going. And like I was telling you about the pits and whatever, I'm taking up too much time.
One of the questions, you remember digging those post holes for the big lights.
Oh, yeah.
Some of them were dug by a truck, but most of them were dug by hand,
Yeah.
close to the,
Coaches got all those kind of jobs.
they were
Yeah.
close by the bleachers and everything. You couldn't get a truck or anything in there to do it. Had to do it by hand. I remember those long post hole diggers where people pour water in them, and they dig a while and dig a while. And
Well, John had the answer. John Moore did. He dropped a stick of dynamite in there one day, and the houses on the Phoenix, Miss Guthrie got to getting calls. There's rocks falling on top of my house. Where's that coming from? And of course, John, he was the one that would, he said, I did it. I just had a little too much of it.
The way we started track for girls, Carl had gone to Temple Hill, I think, for a meet, and came home and telling about they had girls' team. I said, well, I've never heard of having a girls' team around. So I started wanting to do that. We had some girls like Connie Squires. She could throw a softball from one end of the football field to the other. She was so strong. And Gail Barton could stand and broad jump. Now you notice I'm mentioning events that are no longer in existence in track, but at the time in PE, that's what you did. So Liz Sadler and George were at Temple Hill. Is that
Heisel.
Heisel? Yes, Heisel. So they came to Campbellsville, and he was the tennis coach, and she had some, I don't know, high school girls, I guess, but she invited us to come up and have a track meet. So we gathered up some people and went up there, and it came a flood. So we couldn't have it where she was going to. So I invited them to come down to our new track. This was 1964, 5. So they came down here, and Carolyn Shuffett was running the 100-yard dash or the hurdles, and she fell on those cinders that, like Jerry was talking about. She probably still has cinders in her knees. But everybody was so impressed with our track, and we started having more and more girls. Eventually, I got to a young lady who could run what was distance at that time, and her name was Virginia Ann Blakeman, and she was my first runner to go to state. They called it the first state track meet was down at Fort Campbell, and I cannot remember the lady's name. She coached down at Greenville, I think, and she and Liz and I were the only ones that had teams in the rural part of the state. I'm sure Louisville and Lexington and big schools had girls track, but we were the only ones with kids from the country. So we went down to Fort Campbell, and on the way down there, we just packed kids in our vehicles. Miss Sadler ran over a stick and broke her brake cable, so I had to take she and her girls in my station wagon, and we limped on into Fort Campbell. They had the Army bands and all the soldiers running the events, and I think we fared pretty well that day, but it was something to remember, getting everybody there and back home without a school bus. I think the other lady, that I can't remember her name, was the most instrumental. Now, I was not as good a coach as I could have been because my main emphasis was as a mom. And I just couldn't give up the time from home to probably give the girls the time that they needed to really do the best that they were capable of. But when you've got 5 kids, it takes quite a while to get the laundry done and get the meals prepared and things like that, which to me were the most important things at the time.
kind of deflected me there. What did you do to help with getting the state girls at state track? 'Cause I know you played a part in it, and you kind of danced around it a little bit.
Well, really, I do think it was the lady that ended up, she went to Eastern. I just tried in what little way I could to have these girls in as good a shape as I could. Now, really, it was Miss Sadler and the other lady and myself that were the only ones that I really knew about at the time. But after that first year at Fort Campbell, from then on, it was a big deal, and it was in Lexington for a long time. And that just sort of blossomed, and the rest is history, I guess.
Okay, about the time that I started in baseball in Greene County, it was Greensburg then, and we had Carl and myself were about the only coaches there, so we helped each other. In other words, I helped him in his basketball, and I knew a little about basketball, and I helped for 27 years. When he quit, I quit. And but also other things that was important in those days, there's so much difference now than it was then. In other words, I helped him, and he did the track, and we didn't have football then, and we had baseball, and I didn't have any assistant at all my first year or so. And what happened? All the baseball games, you would only see about each school would play 2 games a week. Can you imagine that in baseball? And guess what? All of those were coaches that were basketball coaches, like Ralph Dorsey over at Caverna, John Burr over at Dare, and Paul Cook at Campbellsville. Legend coaches were still coaching baseball, and they would play 2 games a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. So I came back and I tried that the first year, and I couldn't do much with it, because I know basketball is a little different than baseball and football. You play those games, you got to prepare for certain people that's going to be playing against you. And that way, if they do this, then you put 2 men on them, or you do this, you stop them. But in baseball, everybody gets their chance. One guy bats just as much as the other guy does, or your pitchers. So it's a little bit different. But anyway, I came to Mr. Tate one day, and I said, Mr. Tate, why do we just play 2 games a week? Why can't I play a lot more games? He said, well, no, you can't do that. I said, that's silly. I said, well, baseball is something that you practice hard for 2 or 3 weeks on every situation. And it's not against each player, but it's against every situation. And when that situation comes up, you got to be able to handle it. You got to know where to go, what to do, and things turn out much better. So anyway, he said, no, we can't do that. So he came down to my room the night he said, I got to thinking about it overnight, and said, you're right. I said, but I'll tell you what we can do. If you want to do that, then you can play all the games you want to play. And that started the 14-game season to the 40-game season, which more kids got to play in that. And the big difference in those days was if all good players could play, as for Carl's son, 4 best player in 4 sports. But you think that would happen now? Not much way, would it? Because you don't get to do it. In other words, you can't, back in those days, I couldn't practice baseball during football. I had a certain time to do that. And the same way with football, couldn't practice till spring football practice. So all those kids were either playing balls with another sport, or they just walking around the area. And definitely they wanted to play more sports. But they changed that rule not too long ago. And now they can just play a sport and get out and keep practicing all year round, which I guess they ain't one individual sport's better, but it hurts baseball, it hurts track, or the smaller schools, the smaller sports, because they don't get to be involved in that like they need to be. But a lot of my teams, good teams, had players that was playing other sports.
Coach Gum, remember when everybody played about everything. Like I ran a little cross country, not cross country, but I played football, ran track a little bit, and played baseball. So I had my foot in about everything. And that situation was really good. You got your good ones. And moving ahead just a little bit, in my early coaching, your kids played, everybody played everything. Just for Mike, for instance, he went from football to basketball to baseball and track. You know, he played 4 sports there, and that was interesting. That gets your best athletes on the floor and give you a chance to win.
Let me tell you about one situation that you were talking about. We were playing in the finals of the regional tournament in E-Town, and it's supposed to have been played at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But guess what? Mike was still playing, he was still running track up at Lexington or someplace.
State track meet.
The state track, he was in the state track meet, and we were in the regional, finals of the regional. And they let that hold that game up 3 hours till he could get there to play with us. And that was something, I imagine. So that's just different. But sports are sports. And another thing, though, I had to say something about the American Legion Park, because we didn't have a field. And when I grew up, I played on that park. And you can imagine how old it was. But we did a lot of remodeling out there, and Mrs. Guthrie was good to give us some money to help on that, and the Legion would help, and we did a lot of things. Of course, they got the concession stand, and that helped them some, but we built a lot of things out there at that park, and it's still there. And if you go out and see it now, you'll say, well, that is a good park. And but, you know, that's just part of it. You got to do the things that you think they'll make things work. And, of course, recruiting your players for your team and getting all players to play everything. My kids, they played football, and some of them ran track. I don't know if Greg did, but and baseball. And that's just part. Another thing that I did, when I came here, they hired me to run the park, not the school, but the city, the park, whoever was in charge of the park. And I went out there, and we did a lot of good things. And I had some people help me get us in Babe Ruth. See, we didn't have Babe Ruth then, and we don't have it now. I noticed in the paper today that our 10-year-olds had won the state. But what's going to happen when they get up to 13 years old and they don't have anywhere to go? Some of them do. If they've got plenty of money and they're great players, they go out on a traveling team, you know, playing for some other place. And not only did we get to play baseball in the Babe Ruth, the Little League, the Babe Ruth, we also had, guess what, American Legion team. So we got to play till it's just out of high school. So it really helped. I think one year, Greg played 90-some games, counting his high school games as American Legion games. They put them together, and it was 80 or 90 games. So we were pretty busy all the time. And but then again, I enjoyed the school system. I enjoyed the people. And I've told Carl many a time, we came around at the right time. It was a good time for us to be doing it, and I think it really helped.
I would like to give credit to Ms. Guthrie, the superintendent of Greene County Schools, and Mr. Tate.
Right.
The people that didn't know Mr. Tate thought he was just a big gruff guy that was, you know, in charge of discipline and whatever. But he had a soft heart about him, and he'd help any kid as long as that kid would cooperate. And if he ever told him lies and stuff like that, now, he had the boiler room, and he'd usually come and get one of us to go down and
right next to our office, right?
Yeah, and watch the proceedings down there. Most of them didn't want that. He didn't hurt them, but he made them think he's going to hurt them, which a lot of times served more.
Just as good.
I never saw him give more than 3 licks, and that was his standard procedure with a paddle, and it was always fun. One on the right cheek, one on the left, and one across the middle. That was his saying. Or if you don't want this, he gave you an out, 3 days at home. And they didn't want to go home back in those days to their parents because they were going to get something worse. Because they sent them to school and they wanted them there. So I want to give credit to them. Without them, it wouldn't have been possible for us to do what we did, I don't think.
No way.
Also, Walter Randall Milby, who was,
Right.
he should have been a coach because he was right there every step of the way, either keeping scorebook or keeping the clock or any way he could help you. Football, he was there. Baseball, he was there. He just did them all.
He loved sports.
He loved it more than anything, and he did a lot. Pete Perkins was another person back in my early days that was, he would go scout teams for me or whatever if we were busy ourselves. And there was just a lot of good people around Greensburg. O'Connell Milby kept stats and whatever. Jerry's probably got, well, some of the same people, I guess,
Yeah, some of the
and
same.
Larry.
Oh, yeah. We had a lot of people.
I used to keep book for Larry some too in baseball
is that right?
at regional tournaments, you know.
That's good. I still got the books, I guess.
Well, Freddie Tate's team, Freddie Jones's team,
Oh, yeah.
when he was on base 13 straight times.
Wow.
I remember that. He was quite a player.
So it's been a wonderful time for us, and we were just so fortunate and so blessed to be able to come by at that time and meet each other and help each other and help the kids. And I think we did that. And but times have changed now, and I know it's different. It's not like it used to be, because they have to adjust to different things that happen, and we did too. It's just a little bit different.
Looking back at football, there was a lot of people who made football possible. Tennis, TGT and Don Salisbury and a lot of those folks. Udell Kelly was a cook, and we look forward to those steaks they would fix for,
pretty good.
I don't know, steak and baked potatoes and everything right before a football game was really great. The Cozy Corner, Maureen Edwards, they supported football, and Coach Canute had a lot of help from the Guptons, Lawrence and George, with stats and helping with Little League football and getting it started, and travel and transportation. And also, Coach Canute said one of the biggest problems too was getting to the games. Transportation when it first started, getting everybody to the game, getting all the stuff there was a big problem. Coordinating all of this. But over the years, as you mentioned, Professor Tate and Miss Guthrie, very supportive from my playing years. 1965, there's a picture in the annual, the trophies that we won from 61 through 65. The table was full. It was a good year we talked about, and played for Coach Gum. I have 10 years coaching as an assistant in baseball. Also, I played 4 years, and also Derek played 4 years. So I know I could write a book on baseball and the history of it. And during my years, we were pretty good in 64 and 65, and 63 as well. So we had some good. 61, I didn't get to play a whole lot, but I played a lot sophomore, junior, and senior year. And Greensburg was a team to reckon with in the SKC tournament and regional and all those things there. And we have a lot of good memories from that right there as to coming ever so close.
Jerry held the stolen base record for how many years?
Several. Ronnie Mitchell broke it there.
Ronnie Mitchell broke it. And I think Jeff Gum.
Jeff got it now.
But
I was there when Ronnie broke mine. I had 50. He had 53.
Yeah.
I had 52. He broke 53. I was right in the regional tournament. So I congratulate him over in Elizabethtown.
yeah.
Getting back to football again, it was a lot of people who made football go, and it takes a lot of people to support staff to do football, and everybody was eager to get involved in that situation. It was a dark day in football in 70, I believe, 70, 71. We had a lot of unfortunate things happen. Dog bit one of the players, car accident. Another player broke his leg. We had only like 4 or 5 seniors who were injured in that and had to cancel the season. They only had 2 or 3 juniors and the rest were freshmen and sophomores. They suspended the year and did a junior varsity. And that was a sad day, but football evolved from that. Next year, I was back in going again and played and built back up again with the number of players and everybody involved with Little League and middle school and freshman team, JV teams, and has progressed beyond that. That was one of the dark days there. I was gone. I went scouting somewhere, and I came back, and they said, "We got some bad news for you. We're not going to play any more football other than JV games." And I was freshman coach at the time. I had to do all the scouting. And that was a trip there, I tell you. I did a lot of long trips in scouting. Mel Shufford went with one time, we went to the mountains, coach. We didn't think we'd ever get there. We left about 2 o'clock. We got there at game time. The mountains, that was a good experience for us. But again, football's been good, and playing baseball and happened with basketball. I was a statistician for you in basketball. I dressed just like you all dressed, tie and everything on, keeping the stats. That was a good deal. And 65, I went to a regional final, I believe.
Right.
But anyway, we all helped each other.
Jerry, talking about thinking you was never going to get there, when we went to Mayfield that year,
Oh,
the wives,
Yeah.
some of them had gone on ahead, and I guess I had the only vehicle that could carry all the children. So I came behind with all the children. Honestly, we drove from noon till dark.
Oh,
I didn't think we would ever get to
I remember that.
Mayfield. But then we had a really good time when we got there. That was a
75,
great win.
75, 76, the number one team in the state. I beat them.
And Bill Taylor jumped in the swimming pool.
Yeah.
10
And it
degrees.
frozen.
I
And
remember.
he said about halfway out, I said, oh, Lord, I hope there's water in there.
I tell you, another thing that we did in basketball, we didn't have any weekends free, Carl and I didn't, because guess what we did? We had practice for the little fellas, didn't we? We bring them in there and practice just about all day Saturday. We did that every Saturday, and I'm sure it helped some players play. And another thing, back when I started coaching baseball, I had to drive the bus. I didn't have a bus driver, and I did that for years and years and years. And they finally, started getting bus drivers for all sports, I guess.
I guess we all had to drive a bus, because I remember driving that little minibus when
Yeah,
we got.
yeah, that's the way it was.
When I started helping you coach, I was a designated bus driver on the way back. But you always drove to the game. I always
Is that
drove
right?
back.
Okay, well,
For 10
good.
years.
I was still driving then.
Yes, sir.
Dang.
Still driving.
Okay.
And another thing, Miss Guthrie would let the kids, we always have a track meet or a basketball game in the daytime where everybody could come. And that got a lot of interest from the kids when they got to go to those events during a school day. But now that was a long time ago.
Another thing that we did during the lunch hour, we had a free lunch hour, all the kids did. So guess what we did? All the coaches got us a team, and we played the other teams, the freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. And guess what? The stands were full.
Yeah.
There was no maintenance. They didn't have any problem with people having any problems. Mr. Tate liked that. But until we got to taking us too long to dress to get back to the classroom.
You remember that time he said, boys, I'll give you 5 minutes to get in your classroom?
Yeah.
We were just as scared of Mr. Tate as the students were.
Yeah.
He would go down and said, boys, I'll give you 5 minutes to get in there.
Good old days.
That was when I played against these guys when I was in high school. And then when I got a job here in 69, 70, well, I got to join the team here. Guess what I got to do? Throw it in. That was it.
Well, we had some shooters.
You had 2 shooters.
Had
I
some
know
shooters,
of. One can't raise his arm today.
You remember Coach McCubbins back there? He said, I'm going to stay on this end down here. All you want me to do is rebound anyway. I'll just throw it to you and throw it out.
I didn't mention my girls' cross-country teams, of which I was so very proud. Had so many good runners, and the way I got these runners started, by this time we were doing the President's Physical Fitness Test every year. And girls and boys enjoyed doing that test, even though it was pretty hard. But through this test, I discovered that I had several girls that could run really well. So I got permission to start the cross-country team, and we just had a lot of success. I had a lot of good runners. Doris Edwards ended up finishing 3rd in the state. I thought she was going to win it, but they had to run up this hill, and it was the coldest, hardest rain, and she slipped going up that hill and got beat right at the finish line and got 3rd, but had a lot of good teams, and they won a lot of SKAC and regional trophies for us. And then in 1975, the state voted to have girls basketball. And this was going to be a real basketball, not the kind where you have 3 defensive players on one end and 3 offensive players on the other, and if you were one or the other, you couldn't cross the center line. This was real basketball like the boys played. The girls loved it. I got to be the first coach in 1975. Now, I really had some great girls playing that year. I had Ann Mitchell, Ida Mitchell, Kathy Deaton, Lisa Bradshaw, Gretchen Cobb, and I want to tell a story on Gretchen. One day we were having a serious practice, and I said, now I want these girls, you're going to play a certain defense. Either it's 2-3 or 1-3-1. And the other girls were going to be the opposite. So I got ready to throw the ball up, and Gretchen said, Coach, wait a minute. I just want to know one thing. What do you mean when you say offense or defense? Well, that kind of got to me. It made me realize that I wasn't doing that good of a job. But we made it through that year. We won the district. First year we had a basketball team. Second year, Andrea was a small child by then, and I took her to the games with me because I had no babysitter because Carl was away at the ball game.
I guarantee.
So the night that we played down at Monroe County and she ran out of the gym into the street, I said, well, I've done about all I can do as a teacher, and I'm not really a coach, so I'm going to have some help. So Mr. Sharp came in to help me with the rest of that year, and that was the end of my basketball coaching. Well, if you've ever been down to, this was before Monroe County has their new building, you know, and the gym was right on the street. And we were leaving the gym, and Andrea just broke away and ran right out in the street. Fortunately, some of us managed to catch her before she ran too far and got her on the bus, but that was just, as a mom, I knew I was out of my element to try to do that and have a small child, so I learned my lesson well.
One of the teams I remember being awfully good was the 75-76 team, district and regional champions, and beat Mayfield. And that was a great year, a great group of athletes. The Mayfield, they would say, where is Greensburg? Where is Greene County? After the beginning of the game, well, you know where it is now, don't you? You can find it on the map. That was an exciting time for the whole town and the whole school and everything of that nature. That was a cold night, fumbles galore, and I think we recovered 6 or 7 of their fumbles. I don't think we fumbled about once. One of the players that I was an assistant at that time, and we used about a case of tape because at the end of the year, while people getting bunged up,
I did the taping.
he did the taping. I helped Danny Hodges. Danny Hodges played linebacker for us, and he had a cast on before the game was over. I put about 7 rolls of tape on his ankle, but he was fitting to get back out there. But that was a team effort and a community effort, and everybody was really, really excited about that. As Ms. Deaton said, it took a long time to get down there. And one of the things I remember, driving the bus back, we spent the night driving the bus back. I didn't think we'd ever get back home. I drove the bus back. All the kids were just wore completely out. Most everybody slept all the way back home. But it was a team effort. Everybody was there. And it was kind of, we were all 3 coaches here. When one was involved, everybody was there. Everybody went to the game and so forth and so on and supported the other ones. During basketball season, football team sold drinks for everybody and helped out right there. So everybody was involved in helping one another around. And as that was probably one of the better, that was the best, probably the best team, the best athletes. And I start naming names, I'll leave somebody out. I mentioned Danny Hodges because of all the tape we put on him there. Mike was a quarterback, and Tony Canute. And again, I just can't name all the people, but it was a great team effort. And we had some other good teams around that a lot of times not good, how good you are, is how good the other teams are. That's where you determine that. And we have some tremendous athletes in football. And Coach, you had some in baseball too, didn't you? Freddie Jones and those guys, and Mike Blakeman.
Well, their team was 50 years this year.
Okay.
It was 50 years ago that team was playing, and they won the region, got into the state tournament, and got beat 1-0 by a real good team. And of course, that's the way baseball goes. It just one break can give you a win, and that's what happens. And I'm sure we've beat some people that way where we got the break. But that was a good team, and I guess probably one of the winningest teams we had. We were 40 wins and 2 losses, and got beat in the finals of the regional, which I lost a lot of times in the final of the regional. And that was the 82 team. That was when Greg and I don't know a lot. I just don't remember all of them that's on every team. But we had some good teams and had chances to do better, but we didn't. But we also had winning records most of the time. We won most of our games. But you got to really be fortunate, and you got to really get the breaks to win those big games. And you got to be good, and you got to be able to play under pressure. So sports is really something. And I thought we probably played baseball a lot, because we played probably more games. But once I started playing a lot of games, everybody else did, and they got a lot better too. So, but that's just the way it is, and you got to adjust to things that happen. I know we started taking our teams to Florida about the last 15 years I coached. We'd go every year to Florida and play 1 week in Florida, and we'd get a bus driver to take us down. And then there was pay for putting him in a room and had a good time with him. And that was okay. But we were down there one day, and I looked over in the stands, and we had 28 people there watching us play. And I got to thinking, maybe it would be just as well if we went down and let the parents take their kids to play. And also, I'd give them 1 day that they could stay on the beach and do what they wanted to do. And that worked out really well. We probably didn't play about as well, but it was just a wonderful time, and you can make adjustments like that. Don't always stay on the same track if it's not working. So that helped us some, but it was worth it. And all the trips that we made, and of course I had a lot of fun with basketball, because one of my favorite sports, probably more so than baseball. And we had some awful good players all the way down the line, and win a lot of games, and won that region game, and that was a good team. So anyway, that's just the way it goes, and you got to do what you got to do.
I'll comment a little bit here on basketball and some of the teams. My first year I was head coach was 1960, and I had the reason I hesitated about taking the job, because the year before we graduated Jim Ewan and Barry Houck and H.W. Williams, and we had a whole slew of seniors, and I was coaching JV team, and I had a bunch of good players, little players. I'm talking about 5'6" guards, 5'9" forwards, a 6-foot center. That was what we had coming back in, and the only one that had ever played any was Weldon Wilcoxon. I listed him as a center because he was the tallest, but he was a better out player than he was in. So I thought, man, we won't be able to win a game with this, because there were some good teams around. Campbellsville and Taylor County had big teams. We're talking about Clem Haskins and
Garfield Smith.
Garfield, Ronnie Scott, 6'7", and Wilson boy that went to Murray. All three of them went to Division Ones, and we had to play those guys. And so I thought, this is going to be tough.
I'll tell you one thing, that's when I had started helping you. We had 3 or 4 guys, or Carl did, that would fight as hard in the game as anybody I've ever seen. He'd put that press on, and we'd get the ball back a lot, wouldn't we?
That's true, and most of them ran on my cross-country team, and
They were quick,
I
boy.
knew how tough they were. Instead of not winning a game, they won 23 ball games
Sure
that
did.
year and beat some good teams. So that was the one that's probably as satisfying a team as I ever coached, because they produced over and above
They did.
to win the games they did. In 64 or 65, when Danny Butler and Wayne Edwards and Ronnie Ratliff and Philip
team.
Thompson and that crew came along, we were ranked in the top 15 in the state, top 3 in the region, and we made it to the finals. The region was played at Hodgenville, at LaRue County, and we made it to the finals, and there was Hardin McLean and E-Town Catholic team that was always, it seemed back then,
They were.
in the finals. Our district, when I first started coaching, we had about 10 teams in
Yeah.
the district. That was before all of the consolidation. And you had some small schools, but just because they were small, we were small. We didn't realize it at the time, I guess, but you know, when you're 500 or 600 kids, that's a small school, especially now, more so than then. But every one of those little schools had outstanding player or two on the team. Because in basketball, you know yourself, you work hard at it, and if you got talent, don't matter who you play for, you can be as good as you want to be if you work at it and have physical talent. That was a good team, made the finals, got beat. We had, with a minute something to go, we were down 1, or down 2, and had Danny on the foul line. He made 1, missed 1. They had this big boy, rebounded, took it the length of the floor, and I don't think he dunked it, but he probably could have. Anyway, he laid it in, and we fouled, and there's a 3-point play. The coaching I'd ever coached in 3-point shot games, unless you made it the old-fashioned way.
No.
So 65 was an outstanding team. In between, from 1960 to 65, we won 100 ball games. And we never had a big guy in the crowd. I guess Ronnie Ratliff, probably the biggest, tallest. All right, then we hit a kind of a plateau there where things just so-so. We wound up having a good team in, I think it's 68, 69, when Darrell and Larry Walker were the starting guards, and Moby Gorn was forward, Mike Blakeman the center, and the Ellis Estes, probably one of the biggest teams I ever had. We just couldn't put things together. We could play them tight. E-Town Catholic wins the region that year. They beat us 1 point. And we missed 2 free throws down at the end of the game. All right, so after that, we go out of our normal district due to consolidation. We go into the Hart County. We were in the Campbellsville, Taylor
Right.
County, Marion County, Adair County, St. Augustine, St. Catherine, St. Charles,
Just keep
and
naming them
St.
over
Francis,
there.
and
Yeah, they had a bunch.
all kinds of. You had to win 3 games to get out of the district.
Yeah.
All right, then we got down to where it was a lot easier to get out of the district if you had a good team, because you only had to win 1 game
That's
to
all.
get you in the
Like it is
finals.
now.
So, yeah. And it took us a while, because that's a few years there when Hart County kind of dominated, when they had the Compton boy who played at Vandy and two or three others.
Yeah, they
Those
some
Munfordville had a lot of good black players at that time, but we were right there with them. And then we go to when Mike and his crew, Ricky Brewer, let's see, who was
Was Ronnie Graves on there?
Ronnie Graves, Rodney Givens,
Udell Thompson.
Frankie,
Was Udell Thompson on there?
Frankie Calhoun. Frankie Calhoun was on that team.
Greg Blakeman, was he there?
Greg
Yes.
Blakeman was a young player. We opened this gym in 1974. That's when we moved in. Terry Curry, I knew I'd leave out something. Terry was
You're not kidding.
he was a go-getter. We opened the gym. We were probably one of the favorites along with some of the E-Town schools, but we drew in the bottom bracket on the bottom end. And that was a year where everybody who was favored got beat, and we were sitting there waiting our turn. Well, we played Meade County, who we had not played, had not seen them play all year. And Meade came down. It was a dogfight the whole game. Got down to end. We go up one. There's 9 seconds on the clock. They have the ball. They shoot, miss it. Brewer goes up, pops that rebound, hits the floor. He and the big center that went to Indiana, big tackle, weighed 230 pounds. They bumped. He drops the ball. Carlberg, who every time I see him, his daddy was a referee, but he was on that team. That ball went right to him under the goal. He picks it up, throws it up there, and it goes in. Well, we get it down the floor, and Ricky, who had about 25 or 30 points in that game, had played a tremendous game. He gets a decent jump shot, lips in and out, and we get beat 1 point. So that kept us, we could have won. We'd beaten everybody in it. Taylor County winds up with Chop Bridgewater playing the game of his life. He takes them to the state tournament. All right. The next good year, we had a good team with Billie Jean Edwards and J.D. and Curry. We had a lot of that team back, but we lost our size in Ricky Brewer and Rodney Givens. That team won 19 games in a row, by the way, before they lost, and they lost on a 1-point shot banked in from center court at Marion County during the season. So we get down to Mike's senior year. We were in the region every year, and except for that 1 year when we got beat in the first round, we were in at least the Final Four. All right. In 75 year, his senior year, we had played North Hardin during the Christmas tournament at Campbellsville. And that was a year we had the good football. Our kids had not had enough practice to play a team like North Hardin, who was usually dominating back in those days. They beat us 25 points at Campbellsville. Well, people said, well, that's it for this team. Bob White, who was covering the game for the Courier-Journal, he came down and talked to me after the game what I thought about it. And I said, well, I'll tell you, we haven't had much practice, and most of our kids played football, and they got 2 football referees who love to let them bump, and North Hardin had these big, strong 6'4", 6'5" guys. I said, I think later in the year when we get a little more polish that we can beat that team. He kind of looked at me and laughed. But anyway, come down to the regional tournament. We'd beaten Caverna 1 or 2 points, and we had good teams in our district over there always back during that span. we beat them 1 or 2 points, and we go to the region, and we win our first game over Camelsville. Then we get North Hardin in the second round game. Guess what? We go down bucket for bucket. We finally open up a 3 or 4 point lead late in the game, and that's when Frankie put back the play of the game when we missed one shot that would have given them a chance to catch up. That ball came off, and Buddy, he went over top of everybody, and he put that thing back in. And it goes down to a last shot there against Caverna again. Our district had made the finals. Okay, we get the ball down 1. I forgot what, about 12 seconds?
It wasn't much.
Remember, that's the year we beat Glasgow on holding the ball till the last shot.
Yeah.
We hadn't been ahead the whole game,
Right.
and we get that ball in there and make it on. We were discussing, should we hold this ball and go for that last shot? Because you had to make it if you waited and killed the clock. But we had time. I thought we could make the bucket and maybe stop them. So we did. We went ahead and made the bucket, and they had 4 or 5 seconds to go, and they had this little skinny boy, Ned Hill.
Ned Hill.
Never forget him. He could shoot the lights out. They get the ball to him on the side. They had called timeout to set up. We knew what they were going to do, give it to him. Well, he missed that thing, and they had those jumpers in around the goal, and they was swatting that ball, and it was going everywhere but in the goal. And finally, Mike rises it up above everybody and gets it this way. When he hits the floor, I said, we've won this game.
Yeah.
And that's how we won our regional tournament. Nothing was easy. But that team, they've won 12 games in under around 5 points or less. I've said about that team, we weren't great, but if we could stay close to you, we could win the game. All right, so anyway, then we have 1980 team that was just as good as anybody in the region, didn't you think?
We should have
the
won.
1980.
Should have won it.
But
We got fouled. A couple of them fouled out.
yeah, we had 3 starters that didn't get to play. Well, DeStefano was one of them, who's coming in coach. He got to play in the game, all total, and he was our only real big boy that could go around the goal. So Taylor County, we take them into overtime, and they somehow they win it. And then the 85 team, if I'm lumping my best teams that I think I had, 85 team of Richie Kessler, their Senator Givens, Rudy at one guard,
Yeah.
John Butler at the other guard. That team, to start the season, we go to Ashland in a tournament up there. Ashland ranked number 12 in the state. Guess what? We go in, Oak Hill Academy is playing Bryan Station, who was one of the top 10 in the state for us probably. They had them down 20-some points, and we were sitting there watching. Well, what are we doing up here? We're playing the number 12 team in the state the first game, and if we were to luck out and beat them, we're playing the top 20 team in the nation. And Oak Hill Academy had, what was that little guard that,
I can't.
he was
What's his name? Strickland.
Rod Strickland, number 1 recruit out of New York City on that team that played at St. Louis and then was Calipari's assistant coach up there for years. Well, anyway, we beat Ashland really without much trouble because our kids played great. We go to the finals. Well, the second game was Oak Hill. And Oak Hill had us down 14 points in the first half, and gosh, it didn't look good at all. But we had figured out the night before that Rod Strickland was a great penetrating guard, and then give it up. So we just sloughed off of him, and we didn't think he was that good a shooter, and he wasn't. He started throwing them up, and he didn't make them. And we got those rebounds. Smitty was one of them, and we got to pecking away at them, and finally we got ahead of them, and hey, they couldn't make us turn it. They couldn't. We just took care of it and played a great game.
Big win.
And that was the history of my coaching career, was those teams. My first team, 65 team, the Blakeman team, is about 68 or 9.
68.
We got beat 1 point in the region by Bardstown. That never should have been, because we threw up a shot that we didn't have to. We forgot we was ahead 1. But anyway, and then Mike's team and Tony and that bunch, and then Jeff and
Tim, I guess.
Perk and
Yeah.
Perk's on. No, Perk's on.
Yeah, Perk's on that team, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
80 team.
yeah. So,
I can't remember all that.
anyway,
Too many of them.
that's pretty much a history of mine. And I thought from 72 to 85, we were as good as anybody around. And when we got out of it, they said that our program was run down. We won more games in that 10, 15-year span than we won in the first of it. So you never know what people, when you're coaching, you're at the mercy.
Now I want to tell my funny story.
All right,
And it
we
has
need one
to
after
do
that.
with Oak Hill and that trip to Ashland, which, by the way, that was played out at Summit, which was where I graduated from the 8th grade from. And in the excitement of the game, they came back for the second half, and Coach Gum wasn't on the bench.
Shoot. Oh, you don't want to hear that, do you?
Well, everybody was saying, well, where's Coach Gum? Did he get sick? What has happened to him? Well, finally got word over to the bench. Somebody
The
got up
manager.
and went to the dressing room, and they'd locked Coach Gum in the dressing room at halftime. So he had to miss the start of the second half, locked in the dressing room.
That was something, wasn't it? I don't know how that happened, but it did. Yeah. I think back during the baseball years, I coached 44 years, and I'll tell you, we had some real good teams. We had a good program growing. It wasn't my coaching as much, but it was the situation that we got the players, and that's what it did. We built our players out there at the park. When we started baseball, we'd have 80 players coming out for the team because they were all there, and very seldom the older boys got to play much. The younger boys didn't get to play because the older boys were more or less dictating the game because they were more experienced and they were better. And as we got older and older, it just kept getting better. And eventually it came to the point where I don't think we had any losing seasons at all until after we 3 were dismissed. And we were out 3 years. I was out 3 years. I was fortunate enough to get to come back to coach. And I think it would have been better if we'd never done nothing, but that was their deal. So I came back after 3 years, and I never had a losing season. You know how many I won? 6. 6 wins. And that was horrible. And then the next year, I think I won 10. So I said, boy, this ain't no good. But then the next year, I won 27. The third year, I got back. But that's just you just got to build your players, and all of them aren't good. It's great to have some that are good that you don't even have to worry about. But the bulk of the team are the ones, the average players that perform and get things done. So that's just the way it goes. And we finally came back, and in I guess 02, we won the region again. And another thing that we got another bad break. We was in the 4th inning, and we were leading 1-0 or 2-1 or something like that. And it came off this rain that there was. So guess what? We had to go back the next day or next 2 or 3 days, and we ended up getting beat 2-1. So that's just the way it is. but it was, well, baseball was really good. I drove the bus, like I said, and went to Florida. We was down in Florida one time, and we were staying in this motel, and this woman came in, and she had a knife to this guy's neck, and all my kids were watching it. And I told them, I said, now be careful down here because anything can happen. And one of the players, there was a young one, he came over and said, where's my daddy? He was really scared, but he was a good one. But anyway, things like that happen. But we were always telling them, make sure that you do this and you do that. And one of them stayed out in the sun so long that when he came to play shortstop, he couldn't even get his uniform on. So things like that happen, but you got to be able to control that. But it's been a wonderful time for all of us, and we had it good. And, when we first started, a guy like Mr. Tate come along and everything happened. It was wonderful. That's the way I look at it. I was so fortunate. We all were fortunate to have a program like that. And you can look at your best teams. I can't really say. I know that 68 team, that's 50 years ago. I know that was a good team. And some of the other teams might have been better than the ones that won a lot, but competition has something to do with it. But anyway, it was a good time for us.
Thinking back, I don't have, my memory is not quite as good as you guys' memory.
Mine's not that good either.
We had some good football teams during my tenure as head coach. It's hard to name which one was the best team. I think 83, 84, 85 was a good year. Had 16 seniors. Mike Smith and his crew, I always call him Smitty. Then George Judd, his crew. And we were 7-0 until he broke his hand. We played Bardstown here. Friday night flights came in here a couple of times that season. And we've had some great players here. Again, I can't, if I start naming names, I'll really leave some people out. But I enjoyed all of it. I see the guys around. And one of the things was they grew up to be men. They were dedicated. And I see them now that they're doing well. They're giving back to the community. They have good families and all that. That was all part of it. Football is a tough game. We had some pretty tough seasons in the fact that one year we were 0-9. Everything we did just didn't work out. But that team won my heart because they never gave up. They fought to the end. And the officials, at the end of the day, you got a good group of kids here. They're giving it their best. They're manable. And those guys today are very successful. And one of the plaques they gave me said, Coach, we didn't win any game, but said, you were a winner of a coach because you treated us fair and you gave us an opportunity. And I look at them today, and all of them are still doing quite well. As an assistant coach, we had some great teams. I learned a lot from all the people that was my mentors. These two guys right here, and Coach Canute, and Miss Deaton, and the coaches' wives got to be commended for what they put up with. My wife was, she taught Derek how to hit home runs. He hit tennis balls over there. And I was gone a lot, doing a lot, and coaching. I coached baseball for 10 years, and football takes up a lot of time because you got freshman game on JV games on Monday, Tuesday you got Little League, Thursday you got freshman game, Friday you got varsity, and Saturday you go to a college game. Ms. Deaton, I got to tell you a story about this right here. But let me tell you this, say this first. And all my coaching, I really appreciate the opportunity that the community's given me, and the guys have really responded to me. Being African American, when I was hired as one other African American coach in the state of Kentucky, Avis Johnson at Harrodsburg. And later on, Jelly Green was down at Shawnee. We played each other. But as far as being treated and everything went really well. Our community accepted me, and I just appreciate the opportunity of working with the parents and the kids and all that. Now, we coaches, when Mike was playing at UK, we used to go to a ball game somewhere. We'd go to Louisville, we'd go to Lexington in the afternoon game, then stop by Kroger and get some tickets and go see the Louisville games at night. And Mike was playing, so Coach, he went with us. to the game. There was about 2 carloads of us. And we drove up,
Bluegrass.
Bluegrass Parkway. We was rolling right along there, and everybody's having a good time. Guess who passes? Miss Deaton and all those kids there. She beat us to the game. She said, y'all not going to leave me at home. So you had everybody in there.
That's funny.
And Coach Deaton, I still want to know, how in the world do you do this? We used to go fishing down at Panama City. Because I was kind of guilty of that, too.
Let me make that statement.
Let me
Jerry.
go here.
All right. I'd been doing it before, and what we decided to do, this was going to be a long trip. Well, not an athletic trip, but a fishing trip. So we go down there, and we get our rooms and get everything locked up, and go out and rent us a boat, come back the next day, and we go fishing. Well, we went out there, and we didn't know how to fish. But guess what we did? We brought back 1,200 pounds of fish and a U-Haul trailer. Were you driving that time?
Yes, sir, I was driving.
We put it on the back of his car in that trailer, and we took it up the house, and where the breeze was blowing over the bluff, and we cleaned all that fish, and everybody took it home and filled all the freezers up. It was some trip.
Well, on this, I don't know if it was that trip or not. I went by the drive-through. My wife was working on the drive-through, and I said, well, by the way, we're leaving for Florida at 12 tonight. She said, what? I said, we're going to Florida. We're going fishing. I said, she said, okay. I said, I'll be home after work, get everything together. But come to find out, Coach Deaton, Mr. Rosen, was not at home. Guess what he did? He left her a note, gone to Florida. So I still haven't figured that one out. I guess, we've had a great time together, and it was a great friendship. And coaching our kids, they've always been supportive, and the kids are all been really, really great. And I appreciate being able to be around these guys. I've learned a lot. And Coach Deaton used to walk up the road there from time to time. We'd have a little conversation out there by the basketball goal about various issues and things. And Coach Gum and I, again, these guys have been great to me and helped me along the way, my family as well. As far as best players, again, I've seen a lot of great football players come through Greensburg, Greene County, and a lot of them went on to play college ball and various things. So I'll be remiss not to mention or say that I appreciate their efforts by playing. And if I name one, I better not name all of them. All right, I can't name
That's
any.
true.